Hello and welcome to Bonus Topics. My name is Josh, and today's topic is on how I run tabletop RPGs. So this would be anything like D&D or my favorite system, Fate. I learned these tricks from Fate, and they're very applicable to writing in general. So that's what I really like about them. This is the kind of stuff that really clicked in my mind. It made me realize, oh, I can run games now. I can feel confident running games. So, there we go. All right. There's a lot of text on the screen, on the board here, but all of it starts with the idea of a scene. This was the really important thing that helped it click in my mind. So when you present things to your players, what you're trying to do is you're trying to do it in a structured enough way that all of the rules and things can be applied, the players understand what's going on in the game at the moment, what's at stake, and what they can do next. So the idea of this is to see a scene, well, it's to see each sequence in a session as a scene, like in a film or a TV show, right? But how do you create a scene? Well, all you've got to do is ask the right questions. So, for this example game that I have come up with, the title for it is Prom Week from Hell. It's a very simple premise where high schoolers near the end of high school are trying to get a prom date. Very wholesome, very simple. Prom Week from Hell. So, the first question you could ask to begin a story, a game like that, is how does some event introduce the characters and establish the premise? This is the really great thing about having a question be the foundation of a scene, because the question implies a beginning, a middle, and an end to the sequence that eventually becomes very natural and intuitive to understand in play. As long as you know what question you're trying to ask, you know when that question has been answered, and you can move on to the next scene. So, for example, you might have the characters simply eating in a diner or something and talking about their relationship woes, how they don't have a date for prom, and talking about how close prom is, and then deciding, okay, we're going to do something crazy and bombastic to try and get a date. Very simple. Once you put your players into that situation, it's easy for them to get into that conversation, and you know exactly when the scene is over and you can move on to the next part. So the next logical thing that might happen from there is that you just keep asking questions and keep going through each of these scenes, and that creates a whole story. So my outlines generally are just a series of questions like this. So after that, what will the characters do first to try and get a date? Obviously, the players would come up with a plan of their own, see who their targets are, potential dates, and tell me, the game master, okay, we're going to go to this person and do this thing. And then another scene after or during that, will anyone present a challenge to interrupt their plan? So maybe there are antagonist characters who might want to get the potential date for themselves for prom, and so on and so forth. This is how I ran it for a long time, running just a sequence of questions one after the other without really thinking about player agency. But I've come up with a new method that really keeps I've only been able to practice it a little bit, but the theory is that it gives players more agency to do what they want in the world, and to even, rather than just you creating scenes beforehand and outlining them and being like, okay, we're doing this one, then this one, then this one, this more advanced method gives players the opportunity to create their own scenes on the fly, whether they realize that that's what they're doing or not. Them taking action and telling me what they're going to do, that creates a new scene, essentially. So rather than just have an outline, a sequence of questions that we go one after another, I break up the questions and other elements of the game and the story into characters, locations, and events. So I've just written down some example characters, locations, and events for this hypothetical game here, right? For characters, we've got a few potential dates, then maybe you still got a high school bully that you're having to deal with, and then a student counselor, an adult who is concerned for the characters' futures. Maybe there's some problem with their grades, and the student counselor is trying to get them to focus on that, knowing that a date for prom is less important than the character's future. Then locations, there's the school, of course, then any of the characters' homes, then just some random places around town I put down as examples: a skate park, a diner, potential date locations, for if you want a pre-date or romantic location before the actual prom. And then events, these are kind of like how you might do encounters from D&D, random encounters, where it could happen randomly by traveling from one location to another, or you've got specific triggers for these events. If players do X, trigger this encounter, right? So example events that I wrote down: someone asks your potential date to prom at the same time, so that is a question that you insert into the game mid-play, and it's its own scene that suddenly the players have to deal with. What happens if a challenger appears at the same time to ask your date to prom. Obviously, very fun things that could happen with something like that. Some kind of competition between you and this challenger. Very fun, very interesting. And then another event that I wrote down, your bully tries to humiliate you in front of the person you're asking to prom. So whatever motivations this bully might have, maybe for some reason they believe that the players' characters don't deserve to go to prom or to have a prom date, you can throw this wrench into the works at any time. The characters try to ask someone out to prom, then you have the bully appear. You've already got a plan for what the bully's going to do to try and stop that happening. And it's all very dynamic. So, rather than being a linear sequence of scenes, it's broken up into many potential scenes. Maybe you start out with an establishing scene, and maybe there's a scene after that that obviously goes after it, but other than that, you toss it to the players. You say, we've got these locations, we've got these events, you know what your goal is for this story. Where will you go? What will you do? And then scenes happen based on what the players choose, not this happens and this happens and this happens. Yeah. This premise was very fun to come up with. I like the idea of it. Prom week from hell. Very simple, wholesome, and fun. Yeah. That's all I had really for this topic. Just the way that I run games right about now. What's the time? Somehow these keep getting shorter and shorter. That's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again.